The massive crystal chamber of the Galactic Council sparkled under the light of 3 artificial suns. James Walker straightened his plain black tie, feeling distinctly underdressed among the shimmering robes and bioluminescent ceremonial garments of the alien representatives. He was humanity's first ambassador to the stars, chosen not for his political connections, but for his steady nerves and practical mind. The High Council member floated down from its elevated platform, its translucent body pulsing with patterns of light that the universal translator interpreted as speech. Species 47,921, designation Humans of Sol 3, step forward for assessment. Walker moved to the center of the chamber, his footsteps echoing in the vast space. The Council had spent 3 months studying Earth, its technology, its military capabilities, and its social structures. Now came the moment of truth. "We have reviewed your submission for membership," the High Council member continued. Its light patterns shifted to a deep blue. "Your species has achieved basic spaceflight, though still relies on chemical propulsion. Your energy generation remains dependent on fossil fuels and nuclear fission. Your weapon systems utilize primitive projectile technology." Walker kept his face neutral, though he noticed several alien representatives making what he assumed were gestures of amusement. One council member, a towering creature with crystalline structures for eyes, actually emitted a sound that the translator rendered as laughter. Furthermore, another council member added, "Your species continues to engage in internal conflicts. Your planetary government remains divided into nation-states. Your communication technology barely reaches your system's edge." The assessment continued, each point feeling like a carefully measured insult wrapped in diplomatic language. Walker thought about the classified briefing he'd received before departure. "Let them underestimate us," the Joint Chiefs had said. "It might be our greatest advantage." A High Council member rose higher, its body now glowing with what seemed like official authority. "Based on our evaluation, Earth is classified as a Category 3 primitive species. You will be granted limited trading rights within designated sectors. Technology transfers will be restricted to non-military applications. Full Council membership is denied until your species reaches appropriate advancement levels." Walker bowed slightly, just as he practiced. "We accept the Council's wisdom," he said, the words tasting bitter in his mouth. "Earth looks forward to learning from our more advanced neighbors." As he spoke, his mind wandered to the hidden strengths the Council had missed. They'd dismissed Earth's satellite network as primitive, but hadn't recognized its military applications. They'd laughed at ballistic missiles without understanding their effectiveness against energy shields. They'd mocked Earth's naval warfare doctrine without realizing how perfectly it would translate to space combat. The Council chambers began to empty as representatives filed out, many not even bothering to acknowledge the human in their midst. Walker caught fragments of translated conversations, barely above tool users, still fighting with metal projectiles, at least 1,000 years from true civilization. Only one representative, a smaller being with 4 arms and eyes that seemed almost kind, approached Walker afterward. "Do not be discouraged," it said through the translator. "My own species took 3 centuries to advance from Category 3 to Category 1. Walker smiled diplomatically. "Earth is patient," he replied. "We have much to learn." He didn't mention the classified space defense programs already in development, the tactical innovations being tested in secret, or the military satellites disguised as communication relays. As he walked back to his temporary quarters in the Council station, Walker composed his report to Earth Command in his head. The Council's dismissal of humanity might sting, but it also meant they wouldn't look too closely at Earth's activities. They wouldn't notice the quiet buildup of forces, the development of new weapons, or the hardening of Earth's defenses. Sometimes, Walker thought, it was better to be underestimated. The Council saw Earth as a primitive backwater, barely worth noting. They didn't understand that humanity's greatest strength wasn't in its technology, but in its ability to adapt, to innovate, and to survive against all odds. Looking out at the glittering expanse of Council space through his quarters window, Walker felt a strange mix of humiliation and hope. The galaxy thought they had humanity figured out. They would learn their mistake eventually. Though Walker hoped it wouldn't take a crisis to prove them wrong. The emergency alert blared through the Council Station's corridors, its pitch rising and falling in an alien rhythm. Admiral Kate Thompson stood at the observation deck, watching the holographic display of yet another Council world falling to the swarm. The dots representing defensive positions winked out one by one, like stars being swallowed by darkness. 6 months had passed since Earth's classification as a primitive species, and the galaxy had changed. The swarm had appeared without warning at the outer rim, their ships moving like a tide of darkness across the star maps. The Council's mighty fleets, with their energy weapons and shield technology, had proven surprisingly ineffective against this new enemy. "Admiral, you need to see this," her aide whispered, holding out a datapad. Thompson took it, her eyes widening as she read the classified report. The swarm had adapted to the Council's advanced weaponry, their ships now absorbing or reflecting the energy beams that the galactic powers relied upon. It was as if they were fighting with flashlights against an enemy wearing mirrors. The Council chamber, once a place of ceremony and pride, had become a war room. Representatives argued in desperate tones, while tactical displays showed more systems falling to the invasion. Thompson, officially present only as an observer from a primitive world, watched and learned. "Their shields are useless," one Council member shouted, its translator barely keeping up with its agitated light patterns. "The swarm ships adapt to every frequency we use." Another member, its crystalline form clouded with stress, added, "They've taken 3 more worlds in the past cycle. Our most advanced weapons cannot stop them." Thompson thought about Earth's military doctrine, about kinetic weapons and ballistic missiles, about submarines and aircraft carriers. The Council had laughed at such primitive tools, but they weren't laughing now. Their advanced technology had become their weakness. They'd forgotten the basics of warfare in their rush to the stars. Back in her private quarters, Thompson accessed Earth's secure channel. The planet had been busy since their dismissal by the Council. New weapons platforms had been quietly deployed, disguised as communication satellites. The old nuclear stockpiles had been modified for space warfare. Military spacecraft, crude by Council standards but sturdy and well-armed, waited in hidden bases across the solar system. Earth Command, "This is Thompson." She spoke into the encrypted communicator. "The situation is worse than we thought. The Council's weapons are failing. The swarm adapts to energy-based attacks within hours of exposure. Request permission to continue observation and prepare contingency plans." The response came quickly. "Permission granted. Maintain position. Monitor Council response. Report any swarm tactical patterns." Thompson turned back to her viewport, watching the distant flashes of battle. The Council fleets fought bravely, but they fought wrong. They relied too heavily on their advanced technology, never considering that simpler solutions might work better. They had no concept of electronic warfare, of kinetic impacts, of the devastating potential of simple projectile weapons in space. A knock at her door revealed James Walker, Earth's ambassador, looking grim. "They're losing badly," he said without preamble. "The Council's starting to panic. 3 more defensive lines collapsed today." Thompson nodded. "They don't understand what they're fighting. They keep trying the same tactics, just with more power each time. The swarm adapts faster than they can upgrade." "Earth needs to be ready," Walker said quietly. "The Council won't ask for help. Their pride won't allow it. But when their defenses fail completely, we'll be ready," Thompson assured him. "Our ships might look primitive to them, but sometimes the old ways work best. You can't adapt to a tungsten rod traveling at relativistic speeds. You can't deflect a spread of nuclear weapons with an energy shield." They stood together, watching the distant battle. The Council's mighty fleets, with their energy weapons and advanced shields, fought with elegance and precision. But elegance wasn't winning this war. Thompson thought about Earth's stockpiles of primitive weapons, about the battle plans already drawn up, about the fleet exercises conducted in secret. The galaxy had dismissed humanity as primitive. Soon, they might thank the stars for that mistake. Because while the Council's advanced civilizations had forgotten the art of conventional warfare, humanity had kept those lessons close. And sometimes, Thompson knew, the simplest solutions were the best ones. The Council chamber had lost its sparkle. The artificial suns that once lit the space so brilliantly now burned at half power. Energy conservation protocols were in effect across all Council space. James Walker stood at the back of the emergency session, watching the mighty galactic civilization crumble before his eyes. The outer defense grid has fallen. A Council member announced, its usual brilliant glow now dim with exhaustion. The swarm broke through our last containment line 3 hours ago. They've adapted to every weapon we've deployed. The chamber erupted in chaos. Representatives from dozens of worlds shouted over each other, their universal translators creating a cacophony of panic and accusations. Walker caught fragments. We should have built more ships. The energy cannon project failed. We need to evacuate the core worlds. A massive explosion rocked the station. The emergency lights flashed red, and the station's AI announced in multiple languages. Warning: swarm vessels detected in nearby space. All non-essential personnel proceed to designated shelter areas. A High Council member raised itself higher, its light patterns pulsing with authority. Silence. We must maintain order. Our scientists are working on new energy weapon configurations. If we can just hold them back for a few more days, they'll adapt to those too, Walker said, his voice cutting through the chaos. Every eye, crystal, sensor cluster, and visual organ in the room turned to him. He walked to the center of the chamber, the same spot where months ago they had labeled his species as primitive. You're fighting the wrong way. The primitive speaks, one council member said dismissively. What could Earth possibly offer in this crisis? Walker pulled out a small projector, one of Earth's crude devices, and activated it. A hologram appeared, showing tactical data from the recent battles. The swarm adapts to energy weapons because they're predictable. Consistent frequencies, standard patterns, but they've never faced anything like Earth's military. Your projectile weapons. Another member scoffed. Metal slugs and chemical explosives. Another explosion rattled the chamber. Closer this time. The station's shields were failing. Yes, Walker said calmly. Kinetic weapons, nuclear devices, electronic warfare, tactics your civilizations abandoned centuries ago. The swarm hasn't adapted to them because they've never needed to. A High Council member's glow flickered thoughtfully. You're suggesting Earth offers its full military support, Walker stated. Our fleets are ready. Our weapons are different from anything the swarm has encountered. While you've been fighting them with light and energy, we'll hit them with steel and fusion fire. A proximity alarm blared. The station's AI spoke again. Warning: swarm breaching ships detected in system. Station defenses at 40% capacity. The council members looked at each other, their previous disdain replaced by desperate hope. The High Council member descended to Walker's level, an unprecedented gesture. Your weapons are primitive, it said slowly, but perhaps that is exactly what we need. How quickly can Earth respond? Walker smiled. He pressed a button on his communicator. Admiral Thompson, you're cleared to proceed. The station's sensors lit up with new contacts. Earth ships dropped out of stealth, their presence revealed for the first time. The council members rushed to the observation windows, watching in shock as the primitive human vessels moved into defensive positions. By the stars, one council member whispered, "How long have they been here?" "We've been preparing since the swarm first appeared," Walker explained. "Those communication satellites we deployed, weapon platforms, those trade ships, military vessels in disguise. Earth hasn't been idle while you fought the swarm." The station shook again, but this time from weapons fire of a different kind. Earth's ships opened up with their first salvo. Railgun rounds and missiles streaked across space, striking swarm vessels with devastating effect. The enemy ships, optimized to defend against energy weapons, had no countermeasures for simple kinetic impacts. Primitive weapons, Walker said, watching the battle unfold. Sometimes the old ways are the best ways. The swarm adapted to your advanced technology because it was predictable. But humanity, we're anything but predictable. The council chamber was silent now, all eyes fixed on the battle outside. Earth's primitive fleet was turning the tide, proving that sometimes the simplest solution was the most effective. The age of dismissing humanity was over. The real test was just beginning. Admiral Thompson stood on the bridge of the Earth warship Thunder, watching her fleet move into attack formation. The massive screens showed the swarm fleet approaching, a writhing mass of biomechanical ships that had terrorized the galaxy. But today, they would face something different. All ships, combat positions, she ordered. Remember your training. Fight like we're under the ocean. Treat space like the deep sea. The Earth fleet had adapted submarine warfare tactics for space combat, treating the three-dimensional battlefield like the depths of Earth's oceans. The first swarm ships opened fire, their energy weapons lighting up space, but the Earth vessels were already moving, breaking formation in what looked like chaos to the watching council observers. The Thunder rolled hard to port, its mechanical gears and hydraulics responding with practiced precision, while more advanced alien ships hung motionless in space. Launch depth charges, Thompson commanded, using the old naval term for their space-adapted weapons. Modified nuclear devices shot out from the Thunder's launch tubes, their detonation timers set to explode at calculated points in the swarm formation. The council representatives, watching from their emergency command center, couldn't understand the human tactics. The Earth ships seemed to move randomly, their formations falling apart and regrouping in patterns that made no sense to advanced military doctrine. "What are they doing?" one council member asked. "Their ships are breaking ranks." James Walker, standing among them, smiled. "No, they're fighting like submarines, like predators in the deep. Space is just another ocean to us." The nuclear depth charges detonated, their explosions rippling through space. The swarm ships, designed to deflect energy weapons, had no defense against the expanding waves of superheated plasma and radiation. Dozens of them broke apart, their biomechanical forms shredded by the primitive but devastating weapons. "Railgun batteries, full spread," Thompson ordered. The Thunder's main guns roared to life, launching tungsten rods at near-relativistic speeds. The simple projectiles punched through swarm hulls like paper, their kinetic energy converting to devastating explosive force on impact. The Council's remaining ships watched in amazement as the human vessels demonstrated warfare techniques they had long forgotten. The Earth ships never stayed still, never formed predictable patterns. They fought like ancient sea predators, striking from unexpected angles, using the three-dimensional space in ways the swarm couldn't predict. "Launch torpedoes spreads," Thompson commanded. Modified missiles, based on old submarine warfare designs, streaked through space. They didn't rely on energy signatures or advanced targeting systems. They were simple heat seekers, following the thermal signatures of the swarm ships. The swarm tried to adapt, tried to shift their defenses to stop the primitive weapons. But there was nothing to adapt to. No energy frequency to analyze, no shield harmonics to match. Just solid metal, nuclear fire, and human cunning. "They're retreating," a sensor operator shouted. The swarm ships were pulling back, their usually coordinated movements now chaotic and confused. They had encountered something they couldn't adapt to. Warfare stripped down to its most basic principles. Thompson opened a channel to the Council Command Center. "This is how Earth fights," she explained. "We never forgot the old ways. Space is just another battlefield, and sometimes the simplest weapons are the most effective." The Council members watched in stunned silence as the Earth fleet pursued the retreating swarm. The Thunder led the charge, its hull scared but intact, its primitive weapons still firing. The ship's design was ugly by Council standards, all sharp angles, and thick armor instead of elegant energy shields. But it worked. "Status report," Thompson called out. "Minimal casualties," her tactical officer reported. "Railgun ammunition at 60%. Nuclear ordnance at 70%. All ships report ready to continue pursuit." The Council's emergency channel crackled to life. "Admiral Thompson," the High Council member's voice came through, its usual condescension replaced by respect. "We request your tactical advisement on fleet deployment. Perhaps it's time we learned some of your primitive methods." Thompson looked at the tactical display, watching her ships move through space like a wolf pack hunting in deep waters. "Primitive is just another word for proven," she said. "Sometimes the old ways are the best ways. Now let me show you how Earth fights a war." The Joint Command Center buzzed with activity as Earth and Council officers worked side by side. Tactical displays showed the combined fleet's position around a massive swarm-hive ship. The Council's elegant vessels now flew alongside Earth's bulky warships in formations that would have been unthinkable months ago. "Target the hive ship's central core," Admiral Thompson directed, pointing to a weak spot in the massive structure. "Council ships will hit it with focused energy beams, while our nuclear payloads strike from multiple vectors." The Council's military commander, a being of pure energy contained within a crystalline shell, nodded in agreement. "Our previous tactics were too rigid, too predictable. Your chaos, your improvisation. It works." The battle unfolded on the main screen. Council ships swooped in, their energy weapons blazing trails across space. The swarm's defenses activated, trying to adapt to the energy signatures. But they couldn't adapt fast enough to the barrage of Earth's kinetic weapons that followed immediately after. "Launch the main strike," Thompson ordered. The Thunder and its sister ships released their payload. Dozens of enhanced nuclear weapons, each one carefully timed and positioned. The Council ships pulled back in perfect coordination, their crews having learned to trust human tactical judgment. The nuclear devices detonated in sequence, creating a rippling wave of destruction that tore through the hive ship's outer shell. The Council's energy beams followed, piercing deep into the wounded beast. The combination of raw explosive force and precise energy strikes proved devastating. "We've breached their central chamber," a sensor operator shouted. The massive hive ship began to break apart, its biomechanical components unable to cope with the devastating combination of human and Council weapons. The Council commander turned its crystalline form toward Thompson. "Your species understands something we had forgotten. War isn't about technology alone. It's about unpredictability, about combining different approaches in ways the enemy can't anticipate." Walker, who had been quietly observing from a corner of the command center, stepped forward. "That's why Earth seemed primitive to you. We never stopped thinking about different ways to fight. We never relied on a single type of technology or tactic." The tactical displays lit up with new signals. More swarm ships were arriving. But this time, the combined fleet was ready. Council vessels formed up around Earth's warships, their advanced sensors guiding human weapons to their targets. Earth's electronic warfare systems created gaps in the swarm's defenses that Council energy weapons exploited mercilessly. "All ships, execute Battle Plan Delta," Thompson commanded. The fleet broke into smaller groups, each one a mix of Earth and Council vessels. They moved like wolf packs through space, striking from multiple angles, never staying still long enough for the swarm to adapt. The Council commander observed the battle with growing appreciation. "Your battle plans, they're nothing like our tactical doctrines. You treat space warfare like your ocean battles." "Space is just another sea," Thompson replied, watching as another swarm formation broke under the combined assault. "And humanity has been fighting on the seas for thousands of years. We learned long ago that the best defense is unpredictability." The battle continued to unfold, but now it was different from any previous engagement. Council ships had adapted Earth's submarine warfare tactics, learning to move in 3 dimensions with the same fluid grace as human vessels. Earth's primitive weapons struck in concert with advanced energy beams, creating combinations the swarm couldn't counter. "They're retreating," Walker announced, pointing to the tactical display. The remaining swarm ships were pulling back, their usually coordinated movements now chaotic and desperate. They can't adapt to what they can't predict. Thompson allowed herself a small smile. The combined fleet had achieved what neither humanity nor the Council could do alone. Earth's primitive approach had proven that sometimes the old ways were the most effective, especially when combined with advanced technology. "Send word to all ships," she ordered. "The tide has turned. Now we take the fight to them." The war room fell silent as the massive hologram displayed their target. The swarm's home system. A dense cluster of stars surrounded by a cloud of living ships and massive hive structures. This was where it would end, one way or another. Admiral Thompson stood before the assembled fleet commanders, both human and alien. 6 months of combined operations had changed everything. Council ships now carried modified human weapons alongside their energy cannons. Earth vessels sported alien sensor arrays and communication systems. Together, they had pushed the swarm back across 50 systems. "The swarm has retreated to their core worlds," Thompson said, zooming in on the central planets. "They think their hive network makes them invincible. They're wrong. Because today, we fight as one fleet, one force. Not as advanced or primitive, just as warriors." The Council's Supreme Commander, its crystalline form now decorated with Earth military honors, moved forward. "Our energy weapons will create gaps in their defensive screens. Earth's kinetic strikes will follow. No shields, no adaptation, just destruction." The battle plan was unlike anything the galaxy had seen before. Council ships would use their advanced sensors to map the swarm's defenses. Earth's electronic warfare systems would blind their coordination. Then would come the combined strike, energy weapons and nuclear fire, railguns and plasma beams, all working in perfect harmony. "All ships, battle stations," Thompson ordered. The Thunder, now sporting both Earth armor and Council shield generators, led the fleet into position. Around her, Council vessels moved with the fluid grace they had learned from human submarine tactics. The swarm detected them. Millions of biomechanical ships emerged from the hive structures, their forms twisted and adapted from countless battles. But they had never faced anything like this combined fleet. "First wave, commence attack," Thompson commanded. The Council ships surged forward, their energy weapons firing in precise patterns. The swarm's defenses activated, trying to adapt to the energy signatures. That was exactly what the fleet wanted. "Launch nuclear payload," Thompson ordered. Earth's warships released hundreds of modified nuclear weapons, their trajectories calculated to slip through the gaps created by the Council's attack. The swarm, focused on adapting to energy weapons, never saw the primitive weapons coming. Space lit up with nuclear fire. Entire squadrons of swarm ships vanished in the blast waves. The Council ships followed up immediately, their energy weapons striking with surgical precision through the chaos of the explosions. "They're trying to regroup," the tactical officer reported. "Swarm ships are forming defensive clusters around the hive structures." Thompson smiled. "Just as we predicted. All ships, execute Battle Plan Omega." The combined fleet split into smaller task forces, each one a perfect blend of Earth and Council vessels. They attacked from multiple vectors, using every trick learned over months of warfare. Council ships provided cover fire, while Earth vessels launched devastating kinetic strikes. Human electronic warfare systems created phantom targets that drew swarm ships into killing zones swept by alien energy beams. The swarm tried to adapt, but there was nothing to adapt to. Every attack was different, every tactic unexpected. They faced an enemy that combined the best of advanced technology and primitive warfare, and they were failing. "Main hive structure is exposed," the Council commander announced. "Their defenses are falling." Thompson keyed the fleet-wide channel. "All ships, this is the moment. Everything we have. Hold nothing back." The combined fleet struck as one. Council energy weapons carved paths through the swarm's outer defenses. Earth's nuclear weapons followed, their explosions creating gaps in the hive structure. Railgun rounds from human ships punched through newly exposed weak points, while alien sensor beams guided them to critical targets. The main hive structure began to break apart. Secondary explosions rippled through its massive form as carefully placed warheads detonated inside. The swarm's coordination began to fail as their central command structure collapsed. "They're losing cohesion," Walker reported from his observation post. "The hive mind is failing. Individual swarm ships are trying to flee." Thompson watched as the mighty hive structure, the heart of the swarm's power, crumbled into space. Around it, the combined fleet continued its relentless assault, hunting down any swarm ship that tried to escape. There would be no mercy, no chance for the enemy to rebuild and return. "Send word to all ships," Thompson ordered. "The final battle is won. The swarm is finished." The council chamber sparkled once again under its artificial suns, but everything else had changed. Where once Earth's representatives had stood alone as primitive outsiders, now they sat among the highest ranks of the galactic leadership. Admiral Thompson and Ambassador Walker faced the assembled species, their simple uniforms standing out among the elaborate alien garments. "The galaxy stands at a crossroads," the High Council member announced, its light patterns showing newfound humility. "The war has taught us that true advancement isn't measured by technology alone. Earth has shown us that wisdom can be found in what we once dismissed as primitive." Walker stepped forward, remembering how different this chamber had felt during Earth's first assessment. "We propose a new system," he said, "one that measures civilizations not by their technology level, but by their ability to adapt, to innovate, and to work together." The Council's main display activated, showing footage from the final battle. Earth ships and Council vessels fought as one, their different technologies combining in ways that had proved unstoppable. The swarm's remains now drifted through their home system, a testament to the power of unified approaches. "Our victory came not from advancement," Thompson added, "but from diversity. Earth's primitive weapons combined with Council technology. Human tactical doctrine merged with alien strategy. We won because we learned from each other." The changes were already visible throughout Council space. Earth's military advisors worked with alien fleet commanders, teaching them the arts of submarine warfare adapted for space. Council engineers studied human nuclear weapons and kinetic strike systems, finding ways to combine them with energy-based technology. "We have received requests from 17 systems for human military training programs," a Council member announced. "Our own fleet commanders insist on learning Earth's tactical doctrines. They say space warfare will never be the same." Walker couldn't help but smile. "And Earth scientists are already working with Council researchers, combining our approaches to create new technologies. We're learning from each other, growing stronger together." A High Council member raised itself higher, its glow brightening. "Then let it be recorded. Earth is reclassified as a Category 1 civilization, with full Council membership and all rights thereof. Furthermore, we establish the Human Military Academy as the galaxy's premier tactical training institution." Thompson stood at a viewport, watching ships move through the space around the Council station. Sleek alien vessels now bore Earth-style armor plating. Human warships gleamed with integrated Council technology. The future would be neither primitive nor advanced. It would be both, and stronger for it. "There's more," Walker announced. "Earth proposes a complete restructuring of how we classify civilizations. No more dismissing species as primitive because they approach problems differently. The galaxy needs diversity to survive." The Council chamber, once a place of rigid hierarchy, had become a forum for real exchange. Representatives from worlds that had once looked down on Earth now eagerly sought human insight. The term primitive had lost its sting, becoming instead a mark of pride, a sign of keeping touch with proven fundamentals. "The swarm taught us all a lesson," Thompson said. "They adapted to advanced technology because it was predictable. They failed against Earth's weapons because we never stopped exploring different approaches. Sometimes the old ways are the best ways, especially when combined with the new. The Council's new classification system took shape on the main display, categories based not on technological advancement alone, but on innovation, adaptability, and tactical wisdom. Earth's primitive status had become a template for a new kind of advancement, one that valued diversity of approach over pure technological progress. Let this be the legacy of our victory, Walker concluded. A galaxy that understands that true civilization isn't about abandoning the old ways for the new, but about finding strength in both. Together, we'll be ready for whatever comes next. As the council session ended, Thompson and Walker stood together, watching the combined fleet conduct exercises. Earth ships taught council vessels the art of three-dimensional combat, while alien crews shared their advanced scanning techniques. The future had arrived, and it belonged to those who could embrace both the primitive and the advanced, finding wisdom in every approach.